Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Our focus topic is showing you how to build a solid work breakdown structure to manage your projects. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called PROJILITY. We've been implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management solutions for over 16 years now for large enterprises. That includes everything from engineering, construction, IT, and new product development. People tend to get a hold of us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all of their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports, metrics, and dashboards to make project-based decisions. At PROJILITY, we do offer services and solutions in 3 core areas. The first being deployment and consulting services, which is really PROJILITY's core business, where we provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management, including Microsoft's Project Online, integrating PPM with line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. We also have a growing business intelligence practice that leverages best-in-class solutions such as Microsoft's Power BI. PROJILITY also offers a set of pre-built software solutions and accelerators based upon 16 years of experience, including a set of Hammerhead products that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, and connecting data between your PPM system and Teams, Microsoft Planner, and Active Directory to improve visibility, insight, and control over your work, people, and projects. Finally, PROJILITY provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, which is designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on the solutions supported. We also offer training for your end users and administrators and have an e-learning offering that can improve consistency and adoption for your users of your project management tools. We do have a set of upcoming webinars covering topics ranging from a deep dive session on the Power Platform with Project Online to an overview of strategic portfolio management capabilities from a process perspective. We also have our biannual virtual conference coming up on May 11th, so mark your calendars and keep your eyes out for more details on topics and speakers for the event. All webinars begin at 1 p.m. Eastern, so you can register for one or multiple events through the Eventbrite link provided or by searching Eventbrite PROJILITY in your browser. All videos from this and previous series are available on our best practice playlist on YouTube, which are listed on this page here, with topics ranging from managing your digital transformation program using PPM technologies to integrating PPM with agile and line of business applications. So feel free to subscribe and access this library at any time and share it with your colleagues. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor off to Rob Hirschman, who is a partner at PROJILITY, who will be going through our content today. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining. Today we're going to be focused on a very specific topic. We've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of confusion about, how do you go about building a work breakdown structure? There's core components of a project schedule, structuring that properly. So we're going to go through and talk about what is a WBS, how does it fit into your overall project management lifecycle, walk you through the different components of it, and talk through some good practices, not only for structuring your WBS, but for managing project schedules in general. Really scheduling and building a solid WBS are really the foundational concepts behind implementing any kind of a project management system, whether you're doing standalone, enterprise, portfolio management. You've got to have really good information that your project managers are building and managing in a consistent way to make key business decisions. So if you have any questions, please log them in the Q&A manager and we'll take those at the end. So a work breakdown structure, a WBS, is really consisted of some core components that are going to go into your project schedule. So after you've sat down and actually done the project planning, you've coming up with the overall PMP or project management plan, you're actually going through the work structure. This is where the WBS comes into play, and having a consistent standard WBS that everybody follows will help you with your tracking, with your reporting, making sure everybody communicates things in a common way. The first part of a common WBS is something we call the project summary task. The second part of it are the summary tasks below that. The third part of it are the detailed tasks in your hierarchy. And the fourth part are the milestones. We try to keep it as simple as possible and keep a very consistent structure, no matter what kind of a project you're tracking, so you can track and manage and report on this. So again, we've got our summary task at the top. We've got the summary task below that. It summarizes the information and tasks below that. We've got our detailed tasks or activities below that. And then we've got our milestones. Pretty straightforward stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this structure to build out a WBS for each project we're going to be planning, managing, and reporting on. So you can see at the top, we have a sample structure. At the bottom, we have the summary, which is a requirements document, which is essentially one of our key deliverables there. Then we're going to have the activities below it, and then we're going to have a milestone below that. It's a pretty simple concept, but for folks who haven't done a lot of project scheduling, or you're trying to do it in a PMO and standardize on it, having a common nomenclature and describing how you want people to manage this can really save you a lot of time and make sure you have a common language. And how does this fit into an overall project management lifecycle? And you've seen this on some of our webinars. So if we look at the 4 phases of projects, we've got our initiation, we've got our detailed planning, we've got the execution of the project, and then we've got the project closeout. And we look at the different bar charts here, and this is effort. So you see the blue tab is really about the planning. And upfront in initiation and planning, we're doing much more of that. We're spending 70 or 80% of our time really doing planning, and that starts to scale down as we do our execution and closeout. The doing starts to ramp up. So we're not doing a lot of doing. We're not building things or designing things until we really get into execution. The checking is always happening, and checking is a really important thing to do to establish how you're going to be checking throughout the life of the project to make sure you're on time, on budget, within scope, and managing the expectations and the deliverables that you've committed to the business. And finally, we've got our acting, where we're doing things proactively to manage change and risks and issues and action items and things like that. So, your WBS and the management of your WBS doesn't just happen in the initiation and planning phase. It actually happens throughout. While we're establishing that standard WBS in the beginning, we're building a schedule based off the WBS. We're also keeping that up to date as we go through execution and closeout. It's really important to think about this as an ongoing process or procedure your project managers are going to be doing. So let's talk at first about that project summary task, which is the highest level in our WBS. And as you can see here, what a project summary task does, it provides that overview of the entire project. It's going to summarize all of this information. It rolls up our total cost, our total work, what is the name of the project, when is it going to start, when is it going to finish, and this is all captured at a project level. This is always in Microsoft Project. It's something called line 0. So when you open a project in Microsoft Project, the first thing you'll see is it starts at line 1. What we want to do as a tip and trick is actually go into the format or the Gantt chart tab in Project 2019 or 2021. Previous versions, it's called the format tab. And there's a checkbox there for project summary task. Now, for some reason, this is always not checked by default. We want to go in and check that. And once we do, you see down at the bottom, we have a schedule that we're managing. There is a level 0 here. And that level 0 denotes at a project level all the information below it. So while we're building out our scope and determining the scope and building the activities, this level is going to actually drive that up to the top level to summarize start, finish, cost, effort, duration, all of that information. So as we're building this out, remember line 0 is really important to expose because it's going to summarize the information below it. It's going to reflect the name of the project and all the information rolls up from what's below it. So making sure you're exposing the project summary task and you're using that to your advantage as a planner is really, really important. And you can see here, we've got that level 0 that's denoted. And that's the thing, if you're not using the level 0, it's a really important part of your WBS and the common understanding your project managers have as they use the project management tool. The second level down is our summary task or our summary tasks. As you can see here, what the summary tasks do is they identify the specific phases or deliverables, and we'll talk about kind of a good practice there, that are going to be done on the project. They are always captured at the summary level, and they always have activities below them that are rolling it up. So it's going to summarize the information below it. So while the project summary task summarizes the project, the summary tasks in your schedule or your WBS are going to summarize all the activities below it. And some key, and so that's really important. If we look at the deliverable 1, we've got all the tasks below it and the milestone. Again, requirements document, tasks, milestone, which is the requirements document complete. Seems pretty straightforward, but if we look at a lot of different organizations, we go through their schedules, they don't have a common WBS structure. So it's really important to start to think about establishing this. The next level down are your detailed tasks. And this is where it gets very detailed, and every project is going to vary in some way. Some key elements to understand when you look at your detailed tasks. The first of those is the details tasks are really going to define the specific activities you're going to need to accomplish the objective or the deliverable in that part of the project. You want to use these as defining activities. And there are 4 questions you want to ask about every task. Number 1, what is the phase or the deliverable that comes at the end of it? So in the case of the requirements document, the requirements document complete is the deliverable, and that's when the phase is actually ending here. We want to ask, how long is it going to take? What is the duration of a specific activity? How long is it going to take us to conduct our requirement sessions? How much effort is involved and who's going to be involved in that? What inputs does it require? So whose input do I need? Do I need to involve 3 or 4 or 5 people? Do I need to set up a series of requirement sessions to actually do the requirement sessions? So what are the inputs required to drive through that process? And the fourth part, and really important, who is responsible? Who is owning this activity? So as a project manager, I may be responsible for managing a project, but I may have a business analyst that is responsible for actually coordinating, conducting, and delivering on the activities, and in essence, actually creating that requirements document that is the formal deliverable. If we can understand those 4 questions, if we can answer them on every task, we can build a successful WBS. Remember, task names should begin with an action of some kind. They should be a verb. You'll see here, conduct a session, document something, review something, and then we have that milestone or the end thing where we're actually delivering something. They should never be unique. They should not be completely standalone from the rest of the activities. So, but it is something where conducting requirements is different than documenting requirements, is different than reviewing and updating requirements. There's specific differences between what you're doing in each step. If they're not, you may want to combine them into a single step. This is what detailed tasks are really designed for. And then milestones. A lot of folks can really confuse deliverables and milestones in different ways because they are actually very, very different in a project manager's perspective. There are some key aspects to understand when we talk about milestones. The first thing about a milestone is going to capture some important dates of your schedule. And always a milestone will always have a 0-day duration in Microsoft Project. That's going to denote it as a milestone in your WBS. What it's going to do, a milestone, it represents just a point in time. It's not an activity of any kind. So if your milestone is some kind of an action, it's actually not a milestone, it's a task. There should be a milestone after that. It's a very important point or some kind of an event in your project. We're delivering something. It's the final requirements document has been completed. We've completed training. We're going live into production. It's not an action. It's something that's an event that's occurring during our project, which is noting the end of something. We use this to measure progress. So as all the activities above it are happening, that milestone can slide backwards and forwards. So we can always track that against where it should have been. And again, it's going to mark the start or the end of a series of activities. In this case, the requirements document completion is the summarization of all the activities above it. And finally, as a really good practice, we want to include milestones at the end of every major summary task group we have. If you have summary tasks, we have a deliverable, a set of activities. If we don't have a milestone, then technically it's not really finishing. It's not finished when that final activity is finished. It's finishing when the milestone is actually achieved. So it's really important that we think about how we're going to place milestones in our schedules. So we get a lot of questions, what are some good practices? If we look at the structure and establishing it on a consistent basis, what are some of the things we should think about doing? The first of those is summary tasks, meaning the task below the project level should represent some kind of a deliverable of some kind, right? Something we're delivering, it's going to help you roll information up. So whether it's a requirements document, a design document, system go live, think of that as the actual deliverable at that highest level, and then tasks below that are going to summarize to that deliverable. Remember, tasks, as we mentioned before, should always be actions. They should be verbs, and they should be driven as actions. If they're not actions, they probably don't belong in your schedule. Deliverables and summary tasks should always have a milestone at the end. We've said it before, we'll say it again, without a milestone, you're not really completing anything. What it does is, again, it shows completion of the activities in a way that's consistent. And in Microsoft Project, I can go to a view, show me all the milestones, and I can show the progress against the milestones in one place. It's very easy to report against if you use this common framework. Also, you want to set up the relationships in your WBS based on the actual activities from the team. You don't want to make these up as a project manager. You want to sit down with the team members in a room, lay it out on a whiteboard or a big piece of paper on the wall, then convert that over into your WBS. That then becomes the schedule you're managing against. And what this does, it represents the reality of the project. If you come up with it in your head, you start planning around that, and then you sit with the team and they have different inputs on it, then you're going to screw up the whole process. And you have to go back and re-engineer the whole thing and reset expectations. The schedule and the WBS are just a reflection of the work that's actually being done by your team. As project managers, we don't own that. We can only control the inputs and the outputs of that. Remember that. And that really plays into some good best practices for scheduling. If we think about a WBS, setting up a common WBS is important, but from a scheduling perspective, there are some good practices. We want to build a schedule we can manage every day. We can look at it, we can status it. Even if there are not a lot of changes going on day to day, we can go in and start to tweak that a little bit or say, hey, what if I did this? Or If something changed in our schedule or our scope, what can I do to bring that schedule back in a certain way? So it should be something you're comfortable looking at on a daily basis. You want to set up each task in your schedule individually based on the scope of the project. It's really important. And you get that from talking to the people that are actually going to do the work. Tasks have to be actions, or they are not tasks and they generally don't belong in your schedule. The exception to that is what we call administrative activities, things like project management, status meetings, things like that. Line item them, put them in the administrative bucket, and just assume you're spending 5 or 10% of your time on that and manage against that. We also recommend following something called the 880 rule. And that means you're defining a task or an activity in your WBS as something that's at least 8 hours, but less than 80 hours of work. Anything smaller than that probably doesn't belong in your schedule. Anything longer than that, you may want to break it down to smaller subcomponents or specific tasks. It makes it easier to manage and report against. So if I sit with a developer, I say, well, how much effort is this going to take? And he or she says 300 hours. Well, measuring progress against that is pretty hard. But if we break it down into 5 different chunks of 40 hours each, then that's easier to manage. How far along are you? How many hours do you have remaining? So think of it as a reasonable way to track progress. You also want to, when you're managing your project, a Microsoft project, think about not changing dates. Think about letting the scheduling engine modify the dates. Use a field called the deadline field, track milestones and baseline, and then use it as a dynamic schedule, really, where if a problem or a change comes up, you come up with solutions using the schedule to manage it back to scope, schedule, budget, to deliver on time and on budget to the best of your ability as a project manager. Again, we don't own the work, we own the updating and the management of the work. And that's really this, having a standard WBS structure helps us do that in a consistent, measured way. So a pretty focused topic today. We wanted to go through this. And at this point, we'll open the floor to any questions anyone might have about building a consistent WBS. Sarah? And we'll see if we have any questions. If you want to just log them in the IM window, we will take those now.
Alrighty. Thanks, Rob. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box. Again, if you have any questions for Rob, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box. We'll give you another 10 seconds or so here. I guess that's it for questions. So hopefully today's session gave you some ideas as to how the Microsoft technology can help to support your needs for improved schedule management on your projects. If you're interested in digging deeper to determine how the solution could meet your needs, or if you're already using it and looking for ways to drive improvements, please reach out. My contact information is listed here. And we want to thank you for joining our webinar today. Again, feel free to reach out with any questions or specific training information or implementation requirements you might have. My name is Sarah Howard. I'm with PROJILITY, and we will see you at our next event. Thanks for joining.